honor the past as you look to the future. Stay grounded. Keep that in mind and appreciate where people have come from. The people you're working with have been on a journey. And that journey has been their life.
What's going on, everybody? John Stamper. We are excited here. Another episode of Beyond the Operatory, brought to you by the amazing team at Dental City, as we look to highlight some of the things that are not clinical in a dental practice. And very excited to be with Ken Mathys, who has been with us and really established some building blocks when it comes to the business of dentistry. We talked about in his first episode the importance, if you're a newer dentist, on your career opportunities and what to look for and his experience there. The last two episodes, he really broke down for you, if you're going to purchase a practice, a lot of the different things that you need to do, both checklists as well as the due diligence side. And so what we're going to get into with this next episode is we're going to talk a little bit about team and culture. And I think what's exciting about this, Ken, is, at least the way that I want to go with this one, is you have a background as an accountant, and a lot of the things that you've shared with everybody on these previous episodes have been the financial metrics and the things they have to look at to make a good business decision, which I think are so important. But now as we get into team and culture, I think it's important for you to share your experience on, okay, once you kind of do your due diligence there, it really is about building a business and building a dental practice that you find joy in, you build good relationships in, most importantly, you serve patients in the community. And when you combine that with the numbers piece, you can feel pretty good you're going to have a successful practice. But before we do that, you had some experience in a dental lab that you said has really shaped kind of your perspective. And I thought maybe we'd start there as before we get into the team and culture piece.
That'd be a great place. The biggest break that I've had in my career was landing at a dental laboratory in 1993. I didn't even know what a dental lab was. I know that the owner was looking for a controller that could work with their dentists and be part of the team. Prior to that, all numbers, started with Big 8 auditing firm, went to Fortune 500, financial statement preparation, budgets, all that stuff. We're working in businesses that were capital intensive, meaning their production and revenue was generated by machines and processes like that. And I knew I wasn't happy. I was kind of a fish out of water, even though I had my accounting degree and I guess was fairly successful at it. I just really wasn't fulfilled, and I had always kind of wanted to break out of that. And the break came for me in 1993 when I joined the dental laboratory. What a difference. What a great opportunity that was, looking back. And the reason for that was I was way too numbers focused. I was productivity. I was bang, 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 type A personality, right? And it wasn't just the fact that it was a personality, but it was how things got done, very business-like, not very sensitive, not getting to know people as well as I would have liked in terms of that. Enter the dental laboratory. When I looked at the floor of the dental laboratory, very few machines out there. There were a lot of people, wonderful people, artists, tremendous, gifted people that I was working with. And that was a little bit of an adjustment for me, a really positive adjustment. And to try and apply, the goal was then to try and apply my prior experience with some systems and processes, but bring human beings into that.
Yeah.
And it was just a tremendous time in my life, and I'll miss that. It was wonderful.
I think that's a great way to start this episode, because we, like I said, we laid the groundwork for, a dental practice is a business, and it's important to acknowledge that. It's important to build systems around to support that. When I was talking to Betsy in some of the previous episodes, it was, we both shared experiences where we had conversations with some of the dental professionals, and like when it came to numbers and production and KPIs, like they were like, don't talk to me, right? I want to take care of patients.
Right.
But Betsy so eloquently said, listen, like if we don't run this like a business and stay profitable, we can't continue to serve those patients. And so those were some of the things that she shared. But this common theme that you have shared, which is in each one of these episodes, is that thinking about your dental practice as a business with the end in mind, right? Which to me, I want to kind of start with this North Star analogy, right? And really kind of talk about, have you share your thoughts on once you set that vision, then you need your people, you need your team in order to kind of get you there. So let's start there and how important that really is.
Yeah, it's tremendously important. I think the way I look at it, and I can say this with the perspective I have now after having a career of different types, is when you look back, when the day comes when you look back on your life and back on your career, what's going to be important to you? It's not going to be the numbers.
Yeah.
It's not going to be how many crowns we did in 1 year. It's going to be what difference did I make in the lives of my patients and the lives of the people that work for me?
Yeah.
Did I honor them? Did I give them good opportunities? Did I pay them fairly? You're going to watch your staff members have families, have a life, and that's what's really important. So, and obviously, you want to have a good retirement, a good financial situation when you're done, and you really want that for your staff people too.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way street. So if you can, even with all the pressures you have, start buying this practice and all the things going on, you got things to do. You're focused on doing things. If you can get really tuned into your team and get to know them and value them, they're going to make it a lot easier for you to reach that end goal.
Well, and it's often said, and you have such an interesting perspective on this, and I'm glad that you shared kind of this bookend, right? This is, your accounting experience, and then now the people and team and what really matters. Safe to say that when you do the right things by your team, have you have enough experience to see that the numbers will fall out?
They will, with a basic framework.
Yeah.
And when you share with your team and get the buy-in of what things you need to do, the numbers will work out.
Yeah.
And that's really a key to have your stuff together enough to really have a clear picture of what those things are so you can bring people along.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it is those frameworks and those systems that you build because like you've mentioned, there's a lot of things along the way as you're growing your practice that are going to be unknown. You're going to have to learn how to manage. You can't necessarily predict for those things. But how have you seen dentists that have been successful, that have built successful dental practices, but do it in the way that has been inspiring, like you mentioned, where like they were there for their team excelled, and they were able to hit a lot of their financial projections? Is there anything that you've kind of learned over the years that they've done that sets them apart from others?
Probably the number one, there's two things, I think. The number one thing would be to be tuned in to each person. Realize that people are different. Be tuned into them as a person. And I can't believe I'm saying this because of where I came from in my early career, but it's absolutely true. Be tuned into them as a person, their families, so they know that you've kind of got their back if needed. Now, there's a fine line there. You can't get sucked into too many personal issues. You've got to have outlets for that, like counseling, EAP programs, if people get in trouble, right? But if you can express your concern and follow up, you had a big event last week. How did that go? Good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just something that shows that you're tuned in. And the second aspect of that would be that their people know where they stand, they know what's expected of them, and they know where they stand. And they get paid fairly. Those are the two things. And couple that with leading by example, be the hardest working person there. And an important tie into that is trust. And when I say trust is a pretty big term.
Yeah.
It can mean a lot to a lot of people, a lot of different things to different people. But when I'm talking about trust in terms of following through on what you say you're going to do. Guys, we're doing this. Here's what we're going to do. I'll follow up on that for you. You're interested in that professional development. We're going to do that for you. If you achieve these certain goals, you'll have a little bonus, or maybe that's a pay adjustment, and follow through on that.
Yeah.
I think where you lose trust the most and you lose that connection with people is when you don't follow through.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest thing. So back to answer your question, it's trust, building trust by following through, being tuned into people, and letting them know where they stand. Be honest.
Yeah.
People just want you to be honest,
Yeah.
not string them along.
So I'm going to go down a path here for a little bit since we have you and we're talking about this because I think you're a good person to ask this. We mentioned on some of the earlier episodes the entrance of PE into the dental space, right? Private equity and with a lot of these dental groups and things like that. And I personally worked at a DSO in Louisville, Kentucky. I worked at Mortensen Dental Partners. I had a very positive experience with the leadership there and the things they were trying to accomplish or what have you. How do you think, Ken, when we look at the future of dentistry, a good way for people in the profession to balance out like some of those pressures, you know, of maybe what a PE firm looks like with them still being able to do a lot of things you're talking about, which is build a good team and people, you know, not always feeling like it's all about the numbers and things like that. Like, I mean, it's kind of a big question, but I'm just interested in your thoughts on that because I think it doesn't get talked about a lot, you know, but it's a reality of where we are.
So you're the practice leader of a practice that's part of a DSO?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
what I'm speaking
Yes.
to? Okay. Yeah, I think initially that conversation as you're exploring employment with a DSO is to pursue the topics of principles and values. And what are they really about? And do you align? Do you have alignment with the DSO's principles and values? So for sure they're on a mission to meet their targets for their investors and so on. But if they really understand that the people processes and the people relationships are key to that, and they've got to give you latitude as a leader in your practice. If you feel like you've got latitude to do the things you need to do and aren't so scripted in terms of policies, procedures, I think that's the way to start off that relationship.
Yeah.
And you've got to do your due diligence on that too. Talk to other doctors in the system
Yeah.
that have been there. Try and find out what you can about whether that's really true. Because frankly, a lot of the corporate owners or DSOs or private equity groups, in my experience, say the right things
Sure. Yeah.
in the beginning. So it's really, what does their behavior demonstrate?
Yeah.
That, and you've got to follow through. Because in the end, your team is looking at you.
Yeah.
They're following you as the leader of that practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And you're going to have some limitations. You're not going to be able to do everything that they want in terms of pay. There probably is a good system for that,
Right.
pay and benefits. But you're not always going to have the latitude. But you're going to have to find a way to get things done. And if you know that the leaders of the DSO have your back in that respect, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantees of anything, but
Sure.
I think that's a good
Yeah.
start.
And one of the things that you've shared as we've had these conversations is, I love this statement, you know, honoring the past as you look to the future. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that was something that when the group I was with, two other guys and myself, along with a number of other of our lab technicians, bought the lab. We had the blessing of having a former business executive in the Green Bay area on our informal board of directors. And he would say, honor the past as you look to the future. Stay grounded. keep that in mind and appreciate where people have come from. The people you're working with have been on a journey. And that journey has been their life. And it's important to respect that and draw on that. Well, if you had that situation, what would you recommend? What have you done in the past? And appreciating them for that. That's part of the engagement. That's part of being tuned in. That's part of what makes people what they are, who they are, I should say. If you can couple that and tell the story of evolution, the necessary evolution that we have to make, maybe you can point to different evolutions that they've been through in the past and say, now we've got another one. It's a big time in evolution for the dental industry right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's part of respect.
Yeah.
Part of respect, part of being tuned in.
How about helping teams manage through the change? Both emotional changes, industry changes, financial changes, right? I mean, I think dentistry, as you know, doesn't get looked at like this, but it's a very transient type of profession, right? You could have a set team and then one leaves, maybe their husband or spouse or wife or has to move across country, and you're bringing new people
Sure.
in and you're training people constantly. So talk a little bit about like what you've learned over the years through this financial lens and your experience on helping teams manage through the change.
Yeah, change is ongoing. The more things change, the more they stay the same. That's the old axiom. I think the big part of that is communication and education of your team, in terms of being real honest that here's what's going on, here are the forces at play out there, whether they're external or whether there's somebody leaving, and let them know, okay guys, this is changing, here's what we need to do, help me get there, engage the team in the change, I think is a really big part of it. And meet regularly on that, explain what's happening. We knew this was going to happen, it's happening, here's what happened. So it's like, here's the plan, now we executed it, here's what we did, here's what we have to do next. And just keep the communication lines open and reward successes. And rewards I'm not talking about necessarily monetary rewards. I'm talking about acknowledgments, pats on the back, appreciation for when someone's navigated through change, whether it's learning a new skill or it's picking up the slack, it's rising to the occasion. It's probably going to be some of all that. It's probably going to be some specific game plan we're going to have. Yeah. It's going to be maybe a resource we're going to buy. It's going to be people stepping up, people cross-training, whatever that is. You want to build a resilient team that handles change well and celebrates success. And that's just, the more time goes on, the more change that happens. Now, we didn't have a lot of change 30 years ago when I started, right? So it wasn't as much of a factor. But with our team, whatever happens, we're going to figure it out. And express your confidence in the team.
Have you found out over the years that when a practice owner practices that communication that you're talking about and brings the team into the financial part of the business, that they approach it differently? I mean, there's no question when, I've had conversations with some of the clinical teams, the hygienists, the dental assistants. They're not the practice owner. They don't always understand the numbers. They feel that pressure. What have you learned from some successful practice owners over the years that you've worked with of how they've been able to balance both of those out? Meaning, like, the team knows and understands that they care about them as a human, but then the team also gets excited about the numbers. Like, I mean, what are some examples of some things that you've seen over the years? Because that, to me, feels like the ultimate situation to try to get to, right? Because then you're hitting all aspects of what's going to make a profitable practice, but then the team feels like that they're also, respected, and they don't feel like it's all about the numbers, or they don't feel like they're just a number.
That's a huge challenge. My advice would be to share that information in a limited fashion, limited to what they can control, what they can affect. And even then, it's a challenge for teams to understand the numbers. Even as something as simple as a gain sharing type program, where if we meet a certain revenue that's going to give us an expense ratio of this, that they'll get a bonus. Well, how do you increase revenue? Well, it's case acceptance, case presentation, it's overlapping, it's all these things. But it's really hard for them to understand what they're doing today, how what they're doing today is going to impact the numbers at the end of the month or the end of the quarter. It's just a matter of taking time and working on that to help them understand. But in terms of actual profitability and things like that, you probably want to stay away from that type of thing. But if you can break those goals down to things like new patient flow or number of open schedule blocks filled, or which is a real big one. That's low hanging fruit. If you've got open time in your schedule, if you can break it down to those kinds of things and reward those, like right when it happens, that's the best way.
Yeah.
And tying it to a formula kind of bonus has always been a challenge. Teams have done it. Teams feel fine when things are going well and they get paid out, but when things don't go well and they don't get paid out, it backfires. So I think the more you can keep it on the rewards in terms of a solid base pay system and appreciation rewards and recognition on a day-to-day basis, the better.
How about building the dream team, right? From what you've seen in your experience, some building blocks there of practices that have been able to build a dream team. No different than a sports team. I think that, Betsy and I talked about this. There's no ideal situation. It's a process. It takes a lot of work. But what have you seen that has worked, or some of your principles when it comes to building that dream team in a dental practice?
Sure. So what is a dream team? Talk about what is a dream team. I think in my estimation, working with the most successful dentists, the dream team is a team that is on top of everything on their own. They know what to do. They anticipate issues. When things don't go well, they don't come to you and say, what should we do? They figure things out on their own. They are energetic. They have excellent verbal skills. They exude confidence. They build up your reputation in the eyes of the patients. And they like to have fun. And they're highly motivated. So define what you think a dream team is, but a kick-butt team that is going to just take care of things for you is I think the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Pull that back to the next layer is, okay, what kind of individual characteristics are you going to need to build or hire on your team? I would say that a lot of those characteristics maybe aren't learned. Maybe some people can learn them. They learn from watching other people. But it's something inside you that drives you to be the best, to serve others, to not be concerned about titles or silos of responsibility. You can hire a team of that kind of individual. That's how you end up getting to the dream team. Yeah. And respect is a big part of that. Challenging your whole team to be respectful of other people that come maybe from different places, and focus on the work that's getting done. Are we getting the work done or not? Not is someone like this or like that, but that's kind of a general, kind of a discussion on that. But really, that's what it is, and realizing that if you have people on your team that aren't pulling in that direction, you've got to make the change. And the sooner you make it, one negative person on a team, one person that's not holding up their end of the bargain, it's going to take down everybody else. And sooner or later, your good people are going to go if you don't deal with it.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
that I guess those are probably the
No, it's great. I mean,
Basics.
that's a great list of things, and I think that leads us next to then something else I wanted to talk to you about, which is once you build that team, or you've kind of checked some of those things that are important to you, or what's important to building a dream team, is maybe some details on pay for performance. Right, that team is going to perform, and as you know so well, high level performers want to be compensated for the work that they do. They see the importance of that. They're incentivized. So, what have been some of the things that you've seen over the years? That help
Sure.
practices when it comes to pay for performance.
Sure. And a challenge you have with that when you purchase a practice, in all likelihood, you're going to purchase a practice that have paid on longevity versus performance. So it's important to lay out for each position what you expect. And in each position, we had a system where at an entry level of a position, these are the things I expect of you. Midterm performer, mid-level performer, these are the things that I expect of you to do, things to do. But when you get into that upper part of performance, it's not about things as much as, it could be, but it's not about things as much as it is, are you moving the practice forward? Are you making a positive impact on other people? Are you making us more productive? Are you taking care of business so that I don't have to as the dentist? And you can assign a pay range to these segments. So when you look at pay surveys, that's another danger because those systems are probably on the system that you're building. But you've got to adjust your pay ranges to those sections of each of the expectations. Mm-hmm. And as you work with people, you're going to need to lay out, here's the expectations. If you're being paid here, okay, you're taking over a practice, if you're being paid here, but you're performing here, there's a gap. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to pay you up here if you perform. Yeah. And I'd like to see you get there. Here's the things you can do specifically to get there. And if you do that, we can hold your pay at that level. Yeah. If you don't, I can't afford to pay you that. Right. And just be honest with them. The best case scenario is a new employee that comes in. And I'm in favor of showing them that pay grade and those expectations right off the bat. It's worked very well for me. It's given people that have worked for me real clear understanding of what they can do to better themselves, mm-hmm. and it puts the onus on them. And bring somebody along, early in someone's tenure with the practice. It might be every 3-month reviews or every 6 or whatever. Or it could be when you're up here, if you've got to get somebody from performing here to up there to match their pay, you might say, hey, we're going to meet every 3 months for a while, mm-hmm. and we're going to work on this. We're going to work on it together. I'm going to give you some feedback. Yeah. So I think if you can have a system like that, and again, the trust factor is you've got to deliver. When you say you're going to do something like that, especially with regard to pay, you've got to deliver and be honest. So that's the basic of a... Yeah,
well, and one of the things that we talked about and you mentioned is that I think having those early conversations about the pay model, I feel like that in itself gives them a little bit of a window into what we talked about of understanding the financial mm-hmm. metrics of the practice. Sure. And I'm sure the more that they're able to find a way to hit those targets and then be paid, and then that becomes a feedback loop, right? And then they start to understand how things work. But I think a good way to close this episode out is you talked a little bit about how important it is just do the best you can to have fun every day, right? I mean, the financial part is super important. But at the end of the day, when we look back at our lives, your obituary, like you said, does not have met these key performance indicators. Right. It's about your service and your character. And any final thoughts on that?
Well, and that's just being human. That's being tuned into them. That's having fun. It can't be all work. You've got to have some fun. You got to celebrate. You got to get kind of nutty once in a while. You got to be vulnerable. And then they'll know you're human and
Yeah.
that you've got their back and, you know, you have their best interests in mind.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Ken, thanks for another great episode. We've got one more that we want to talk with you about, and it's about business management. I think that's going to kind of, you know, put a bow on this whole series that we've had with you, where you've really kind of laid out the financial part of the business part of a dental practice, and I think that business management piece, you're going to get into some strategy and some things like that of how you can do what you need to do to,
Yep.
I wouldn't say have the practice run on autopilot, but in many regards, you know, that's kind of the goal, right?
Once they're established, then you're golden in terms of really being able to enjoy things.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again, and thanks for watching, everybody. Again, if you've got any value out of this content, would love to have you subscribe on YouTube if that's where you're watching, and then, of course, on Apple and Spotify download, and we'll be sure to upload these episodes, each one that we send. So thanks for your time. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, John.